so we are about 12 hours and 7 minutes away from the end of 2016. So I wanted to share my favorite 16 photos from 2016, and they're not in like my strongest photo or my most popular photo. I figured I'll just go chronologically. So we'll start from the very first few photos taken in early January all the way through photos taken this week. So photo number one is of one of the most popular waterfalls, definitely in the Pacific Northwest, and it's Multnomah Falls. I took it on January 3rd, 2016. I used my Sony a7R Mark II and the Zeiss Bodice 18mm f2.8 lens. Now, here's the thing about this photo, why I love it. First, we don't get snow, at least for the 5 or so years that I've lived in Oregon, we get snow, but not that much. So when it started snowing, I hustled into the gorge, and I was actually surprised to see how many people were at Multnomah Falls. Usually, this kind of tough weather kind of detracts people from heading into the falls, but not this day. Another surprising thing is that usually when there's icy and snowy conditions, they'll close the gates to the Benson Bridge. But if you look at the photo, you'll see that there are people on there. And I actually like it in this case. There aren't too many people, and it just kind of gives a sense of scale and a sense of depth to the photo. Also, just to see Multnomah Falls all kind of frosted in snow, it's really something special. So this starts off number one of my favorite 16 photos. Photo number two was taken on January 21st, 2016 with my Sony a7R Mark II and the Zeiss Bodice 85mm 1.8. Now, this was my very first time to Cuba, and it was just a spectacular visit. I went as part of a workshop called The Giving Lens, and it was their first time going to Cuba as well. This photo kind of encapsulates what it was like in there. You have this guy bent over in the hood of his car fixing it. You know, it's a definitely a relic of vintage car, and this is what everyone does over there because importing in is so restricted. They're working basically on the cars they have with the parts that they can get. So this photo really stands out for me. It's one of my favorites from the entire trip in Cuba. We're sticking around in Cuba still for number three, and I took number three also with my Sony a7R Mark II and the Sony FE 16 to 35mm f4 lens. Now, I took it on January 31st, 2016. It was at the tail end of my 2 weeks in Cuba. By this time, the Giving Lens workshop had ended, but my buddy Colby Brown and I stuck around because we wanted to explore Havana a bit more. And one of the days we wanted to look for some souvenirs, you know, locally made things that we can purchase to help support the economy and to bring a piece of Havana, Cuba back with us. Now, we found this wonderful store where this artist was creating these beautiful handmade sculptures, and we each bought one. While Colby was searching for his piece, I walked around a bit more and I saw this particular scene, and to me it was wonderful. I love it because you can see that these groupings of mailboxes were painted with the Cuban flag, and off to the right you can see one of the typical vintage cars that Havana is so known for. And on top of that, the colors all around Havana are just so bold and pretty, so it really makes for a very photogenic scene. Number four spot is something that I'm very familiar with, and that's the waterfalls and the streams of the Pacific Northwest. I took it on February 7th, 2016 with the Sony a7R Mark II and the Sony FE 28mm f2 lens with the fisheye adapter that's made for it. Now, this is taken at Mossy Grotto, and the reason why I selected it is, aside from it being a beautiful place, that's one of the more difficult locations that I had to hike to. It's one of those things that stands out to me because it was an accomplishment to me. Tons of people have visited there, but that was my first time. On top of that, it's just a beautiful photo. Mossy Grotto is just one of those places that when you get there, you just want to sit around and enjoy the location. In the number five spot, we have a five photo pano taken on February 19th, 2016 with the Sony a7R Mark II and the Sony FE 16 to 35mm f4. So you can see here my buddy Brian is standing right in the middle of one of the giant redwood trees at Jedediah Smith State Park in California. and I specifically asked him to stay there. Now, this was my first time ever seeing a redwood, so I was just in awe. And I really wanted to give a sense of just how large it is. So I had Brian stand right in the middle of the trunk, and in order to get everything properly to scale and oriented, I decided to go with a 5 vertical pano stitch. And so with that, you can see the surrounding shrubbery around it, and you can see just how massive the trunk is. Brian's a tall dude, so it's a big tree. Number 6 was taken the day after on February 20th, 2016 with the Sony A7R Mark II and the Sony FE 16 to 35mm f4. And it's of Thors Well near Cape Perpetua. Now, I love Thors Well. It's just one of those places where even it's just this hole in the ground, like a sinkhole. And as the tide comes in, the water rushes down, creating these beautiful kind of water cascades, but then it explodes up. And so this was my third or fourth time visiting the area. It's an absolutely beautiful place to be. And even though it basically is the same scene, it can vary greatly depending on the weather and the conditions of the sky and the surrounding area. So that's why I absolutely love returning here over and over. Number 7 is actually kind of a continuation of number 6. It was taken about an hour or two after number 6 on the same day, February 20th, 2016. Except this time I changed my lens. Still using the Sony A7R Mark II, but I'm using the FE 70 to 200mm f4. And the reason why I went with the telephoto lens is because I wanted to get a further throw. I was also standing way far from the actual well. And the thing about Thors Well is that while it's beautiful, it's also exceptionally dangerous if you're not paying attention. So I was walking back where we're getting ready to leave, and I turned around and I saw the explosions of water. So I put on my telephoto lens, and you can see these people just standing right next to the well. And it's just one of those places, if you do not have your senses about you, a giant wave can slam you. Not only can it slam you and easily destroy your gear, but it can hit you so hard that you can potentially fall into the well. And if you do that, it's just bad news. Number 8 is one of my favorite experiences from 2016. It was taken on April 3rd at the Wooden Shoe Tulip Festival. It was my first time ever going there, and I guess I didn't know what to expect, especially in terms of the crazy bold colors. The best part about the day was that it was overcast, and because of that, the colors from the tulips and the hot air balloons that were taking off just exploded against the kind of mute, monotone background. It took about an hour for the hot air balloons to fully inflate, and then people started packing in. So I waited until the first balloon was about 20 or 30 feet off the air, and I composed it in between some trees with the bed of tulips at the bottom of the frame. I just really liked the way it turned out. Number 9 was taken on May 8th, 2016 at Proxy Falls. Now I had used my Sony A7R Mark II, and I was putting my brand new Sony FE 24 to 70mm f2.8 G Master lens, which I'm using to film this video with. This was my first time visiting Proxy Falls, and I was so excited because I'd seen photos of it and I just wanted to shoot it for myself. As we drove there, the weather conditions were great, meaning they were overcast. And I was excited about that because if you have bright blue sunny skies, that is exceptionally difficult when you want to photograph waterfalls because the sunlight will reflect off of the white caps of the waterfalls and just blow out your highlights. And sure enough, when we got to Proxy Falls, the overcast skies made way to blue skies and sun. And the reason why I selected this photo, other than the fact that I like it a lot, is that it reminds me of the importance of just making do with what you have. It's something that admittedly I overlook and forget a lot because I have these expectations where I just want perfect weather conditions like anyone else. And when you have sun, it just makes this particular type of photography that much more difficult. Even if your camera has a ton of dynamic range, it's still just very difficult. And you can see back in the photo that you can see the highlights of the top center of the frame blown out, and shadows are just super, super deep. So I ended up just embracing this, and the stylization process that I went through accentuated it. At the end, I ended up really liking the photo. Even though it is a bit punchier than I like, still, I'll never forget this trip to Proxy Falls. Rounding out number 10 is a photo I took on May 22nd, 2016, Sony a7R Mark II, Zeiss Bodice 18mm f2.8. And the reason why I selected it, this is Little Zigzag Falls. I've been here many times. And the reason why I selected it is because despite all the times that I visited here, I don't ever remember seeing this particular shot. This bridge is right by the main parking area of the waterfall, and I must have always overlooked it every time I've gone before. So this time I saw the bridge and I saw this particular scene, and I immediately fell in love with it. I loved the way the water was kind of cascading down that rock, and the particular processing style that I applied gave it this, I don't know how to explain it, but the cinematic kind of Indiana Jones feel. And to this day, it's still one of my favorite photos of all the photos I have at Little Zigzag Falls. It's definitely one of my favorite. In July of 2016, I returned to co-lead a workshop with the Giving Lens in Nicaragua. And this photo was taken on July 6th with the Sony a7R Mark II and the Zeiss Bodice 85mm 1.8. I took the photo when we visited the Mombasa rainforest outside of Grenada, and something about it just always stuck with me. In fact, it's my desktop background photo, and I have it there because I just love the way it looks. The reason why I selected the 85mm lens for this particular photos because I wanted to get a sense of compression here. So I was actually standing quite a distance before this little footbridge, and I really liked the way the various foliage and trees flanked it. On top of that, because it was a rainforest, we had a bunch of rain coming in with some fog, and that gave some beautiful atmosphere to the shot. It's just one of those photos that I love staring at. I can stare at this for hours just because of how serene it is. Luck and timing was on my side for number 12. It was taken the next day on July 7th, 2016. And the reason why I say that is because Masaya Volcano in Nicaragua was actually active, so there was lava flowing. The thing that makes it super lucky is that because it was flowing and you can see the lava so easily, it became super crowded, so much so that the government actually limited how many people can go. So they would let a certain number of cars go through, and you were fixed to, I believe, 30 minutes, if I remember correctly. So we had to be on point with those 30 minutes. And to get this shot, I was leaning over as far as I could with my camera in hand, just basically blind shooting. I had the articulating display of the camera pointed so I can kind of see what I was getting at, but because the lava was so far over the viewpoint, you really had to stick your hand out. Unfortunately, I got a shot that I was really happy with where you can see the glow of the lava, you can see a little bit of the lava, and the particular processing style that I went for was this kind of apocalyptic feel. Probably my favorite part of this photo is the way the lava, the glow of the lava is radiating off of the fumes. I took number 13 on October 22nd, 2016, and I used my Sony a7R Mark II and the Zeiss Bodice 18mm 2.8. Now here's the thing, this was taken at Silver Fall State Park. The reason why I love this photo is because of all the years that I've lived in Oregon, I've never had an opportunity to photograph the foliage. And the reason for that is because almost always when we have peak foliage, I'm traveling to New York City probably for Photo Plus, or I'm just somewhere else, and I always miss the peak foliage. But this time I was able to get to Silver Falls when the leaves were beautiful and vibrant, and on top of that, because we got here so early, there was still a lot of that morning fog that gave it the sense of atmosphere that you can see towards the upper center of the frame. Number 14 was taken on the same day, a few hours later, except this time I was using the original Sony a7 that I had converted to infrared, and I had it mounted with the Sony FE 24-70 2.8 G Master lens. That's quite a mouthful. The reason why I selected this photo is because, one, I decided to try infrared some more. I knew I was going to Silver Falls. I knew there would be a lot of kind of foliage and nature, And I know that infrared responds really well to that. What I didn't expect was the amount of fog that we had, and the sun, which was still kind of low on the horizon. The crepuscular rays that you see here just busted through them. And it's just one of my favorite photos that I've taken from that trip because of how awe-inspiring it is. Those crepuscular rays really make the photo. I also love the way the light is bouncing off of the leaves towards the right of the frame. That just makes it, and because it's in infrared, my particular processing was extra punchy, so you can get those deep blacks and bright whites. Okay, almost done. Number 15 was taken on October 25th, 2016, and I used my Sony a7R Mark II with the Sony FE 70-200mm f4. Now, this was taken in Boardman, Oregon. We hustled over there, partly because we still had the fall foliage colors, and also because we read that the tree farms over here, these beautiful poplar trees, are scheduled to be basically cut down, and that's a huge bummer. So this is one of the last years possibly that we can see these beautiful trees. We got there, and after spending a few hours photographing them, I got into kind of an experimentation mode. I had the camera on my tripod, and I set the shutter speed to about 1/8 of a second at f20, and I started the exposure and begun panning the camera up and down on the ball head. What I was looking for was to get this ethereal, dreamlike look, and because of the shutter speed, it was just long enough to capture the motion while still having detail in the trunks of the trees. On top of that, I played off the tone of the tree trunk against the warmer tone of the leaves, and that added a nice sense of color contrast. All right, we made it to the last one, number 16. I took it on December 3rd, 2016, using the Sony a7R Mark II and the 24-70mm f2.8 G Master lens. Now, the reason why I selected this photo is partly because I started number 1 with a photo of Multnomah Falls, and I'm ending it with a photo of Multnomah Falls. Now, the difference is the first one was taken at the base of the falls, and this one was taken from the very top. This was the first time I hiked up to the top of Multnomah Falls, and I didn't even know that there was an observation deck up there. So I set the tripod up as tall as it went, and I positioned the camera so that it was hanging over, and I love it because, sure, you can see the waterfall cascading down, but if you look to the right, you can see the base where I was standing to get the first photo of this series. Now, on a nice day with beautiful weather, picture 100 times more people there. That parking lot in the background will be crammed. People will be waiting to park. It's just a crazy show. But it's a beautiful waterfall, so you really can't fault people for wanting to visit. So those are my 16 favorite photos from 2016. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it, and leave in the comments any of your favorite photos that you have posted for the year. Love to check them out. And please be sure to hit the subscribe button. So that's that. Last video of the year as well. I want to wish everyone a wonderful new year and have a great 2017.